Hi, everybody. My name is Nisrine. I'm part of the DC chapter. I'm also the learning lead for afikra. And today I'm going to be sharing with you an article that actually is talking about a children's book. And the article is called A Girl of Glass in a World of Explosions on Trauma and a Necessary Children's Book. And just before we get started, just a quick, little disclaimer or warning that, this, if you have any triggers regarding trauma, that is kind of the topic of the book. So just, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. It's just a short presentation, but I just want to put that out there. Okay, so I found this article on the website Seen Arabia, and it's written by Bahira Amin. And basically it's, she's talking about and interviews the author of this book, which is called Shams. It's written and illustrated by Sundus Abdelhadi, and who is an Iraqi-Canadian writer and illustrator. It features calligraphy by the Tunisian calligraphy artist El Cid, Tunisian French, and the book design is by a Lebanese visual designer called Roy Saadi. So it's really quite the pan-Arab team that has put together this beautiful book. And so it basically tells the story of Shams, this little girl who is made of glass. She's, relishing in everything that is free in her soul, and she's, just living life. But one ominous day, she crashes into a million pieces. And the book really follows her path after that. Will she rise again and recollect her colors? And so it's the age that it's targeting is ages 7 and up, and it's available in both Arabic and in English. So it is really a story of trauma and empowerment, and it seeks to transform tragedy through magical realism and guided by ancestral wisdom. So, why a children's book on trauma? And for Arab children, I think, obviously the region is experiencing lots of trauma throughout. And it was really a personal experience as well for the author that she lived through and was dealing with PTSD surrounding 2009, like basically a string of 5 suicide bombings on the same day in 5 different parts of Baghdad. So really, that was one of the major sort of impetus that made her write this book. She uses magical realism to illustrate the transformative power of healing. She says this book is for the new generation who need to make sense of the violence that they've experienced. They need to be able to see themselves in a story that doesn't just show them as victims, but shows them as survivors. And the character of Shams is really based on this very idea. So she's made of glass, she's fragile at the outset, but ultimately she can only become a kaleidoscope by putting herself back together in a wholly new way. She also says that Shams represents an entire generation that has experienced trauma that haven't had access to the kind of healing and support they needed. But when we do have the tools to be able to process our trauma, the growth that comes from it is limitless. And so this is, her effort in contributing to that that discourse around trauma and healing. Something that's interesting is that she, the experience that happens that breaks Shams into a million pieces is not ever, explicit what it is. She says, I never explicitly say it's a bomb, I just call it a boom. And here is the illustration in the book of that moment. And she does that because she says it's an opportunity to talk about what other children experience in the world that could cause them to potentially break. And it could be anything, an event that turns your world upside down, that makes you shatter, and that can transform you. Along her journey, Shams receives help and guidance from another character who's named Shifa, which, is the Arabic word for healing. She sort of functions as a conduit of ancestral wisdom, but ultimately the journey is Shams's alone as she goes inside herself and is, really undergoes kind of this process similar to what the author herself went through in her own healing after Baghdad in 2009. Another thing that's interesting is that the colors of the book themselves shift to match the different turns of Shams's journey. So it starts with kind of pretty pastels and then becomes very stark black. And then we saw that other image of the red, but ultimately reaches to a even brighter palette. And so this is also, intentional, trying to illustrate that transformation and the ability to move forward. So as we can see in this illustration, Shams puts herself back together, and I don't have the book to know exactly where this quote is from, if it's at the end, but or if there's more after it, but it's basically says, "You were broken but fixed, renewed and transformed. Your soul is still intact. Remember to breathe, accept and believe. On the days you miss the past, go sit by the water." So as I said, this book is obviously it's quite relevant for our time. Children all over the region are experiencing a lot, all over the world really, but this is by being in both Arabic and English, it's really serves as a tool for children in the region. And so here I've just put the links of where you can access the book. We Are the Medium is where you can order the English copy, and the Arabic version is available on Tamer Institute. I've also included an article, basically a journal article on PTSD among children and adolescents in the Arab world. And that is it. That is me, Nisrine Shahade, as my Instagram and my email if you want to get in touch. And thank you very much for your attention.